Yo, what up? You've heard how every superhero has their origin story, right? Well, welcome to the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. I am your host, Desi Abeda. I'm a high-performance mentor, registered dietitian, and family man. Tune in as we explore the high-performance habits of high performers, their origin story, and how they went from disbelief to belief in their own hero's journey, where they got to a point and shouted, "Can't believe I made it." Enjoy the episode. Yo, what is good, people? Welcome to another episode of the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. I am your high-performance mentor and podcast host, Desi Abeda. Guess what, people? Today is episode 100. I know that we create these milestones. I'm not really sure why 50 is a big number, why 100 is. I mean, hell, it could even have been like 102. Like, it doesn't matter. To me, the milestone of 100 means so damn much. But it means even more that you as a pod family and pod listeners and in our Can't Believe community, that you stuck with me this whole time. You know, we have people in 23 other countries listening to this pod, you know, listening to a kid from Tucson, Arizona and Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's just, it's fucking surreal. So a lot of what you're going to get today is such a great amount of value and really a huge immersion of what the process looks like. And so in so many ways, folks, pod family, thank you so much for tuning in each and every episode. And now that we're at 100, we're in full celebration mode. So for today's pod, before we get into what we're going to talk about throughout the day, throughout this celebration, I want to talk about the big thank you that we are given to our pod family and pod listeners. So we are now doing a current giveaway over the next more or less 2 weeks, probably like 10 to 12 days. And so what we're doing for 3 lucky winners, we're actually going to announce this on May 6th at noon Pacific Standard Time. So I'm going to announce this and we will select our 3 winners. And so those 3 winners are going to get podcast merch. They're going to get a life-changing journal that I've spoken about on this pod, the 5-minute journal. And then they're also going to get gifted, or they're going to receive a free month of one-to-one performance coaching by yours truly through a lot of our Voxer programs. And so there's a lot that we're giving away. So for 3 lucky winners, you're going to be able to do that. In order to enter, all you have to do is go to the podcast page on iTunes, give us a rating. Please hit that 5-star. If you look at the ratings right now, one person gave 1 star and no review. So I'm just like telling myself the story that they did this on accident. But to the person who gave us 1 star, why? Why you got to do that to me? Like I think, I don't know how many ratings. We might have like 39. I might be pulling that number out of my butt. We have 39 5 stars and then 1 star. Like, come on. Like, who are you? Show your face. You know, as I'm saying this, you're probably one of my best friends that's just trying to fuck with me. So, but anyway, we're going to be doing this giveaway over the next 2 weeks. So like I said, the only thing that you have to do to enter, or if you don't even care about entering and you just haven't rated and reviewed the pod, friends, this is how we get this message. This is how we grow the community. And this is how we continue to get more ears to this pod and helping us to really acknowledge what it's like to be a high performing in life and in all of our endeavors. And so we'll be announcing that on May 6th. All you have to do is go rate, review, take a screenshot. You can DM me at Desi Abeda. You can DM us at I Made It Pod and let us know you entered. And we will announce those 3 lucky winners. And for those that don't win, again, thank you so much for rating and reviewing. This is how we get seen and how we get heard. So it's a glorious day today. So for today's pod, I wanted to do it in sure fashion in the ways that I've done it in all the past seasons. We're actually going to rock a couple more episodes before I close down season 6. We're going to take a small break so I can realign with things that I want to make sure that I do from the standpoint of providing value for you all, because I want to continually do that. So for today's pod, we're doing in sure fashion of our clip show. So I am going over the 6 most favorite episodes that I've had. Each and every episode holds a different place in my heart. And so I wanted to go ahead and make sure that we sort of provided you with a clip show. And really, like, I'm not even going to call it a clip show. It's a celebration episode. So without further ado, here are the 6 episodes that for me were completely life-changing. So as we start off, I got to start with the very first episode. I know that I was like trying to get my bearings and trying to get comfortable doing it over a microphone and with headphones on. And I don't even want to say that it's cringe because I don't even look at myself like that anymore. I look at myself as like, hey man, like what you did for this episode 1, what you did sitting in that chair, pressing play, pressing record, like, yo, that was a courageous act because I know how much you overthought this project. I know how much self-doubt. I know that this was a scary thing for you to do. And as one of our all-star episodes, if you will, said, like, hey, show up and do it scared. So as you hear me kind of go on and see the evolution over the last 100 episodes, this is me doing it scared. And I hope it's a great reminder for you. So enjoy this first clip. I'll catch you on the other side of this later. I think that we should definitely dedicate an episode just to our fathers, and absolutely. I think people aren't going to be able to see actual video footage, but I'm pretty sure we'll share some tears together. Anytime absolutely, man. You know what I mean. Anytime you get me talking about my dad, thankfully he's still here. But anytime you get me talking about him, I'll get teary eyed real quick because I think, and this is a huge reason why I really wanted to do this, and I'm excited to do this with you. When we speak to the heart of men, when we speak to fathers, when we speak to those people who are wanting to be leaders in their family and fathers, I think at the end of the day, helping to help them understand their role and also help them understand that they don't have to do this perfectly. But I think you alluded to this, and I think it's huge. Adversity is going to happen. Now, what you do with that is the magic, right? Because a lot of what you had said, Matt, I definitely resonate with. I think, I didn't end up going D1 or, playing arena football, but, I definitely wanted to, but, I'm 5'6", 160, like there's not a whole, and my 40 time is like 4'6". That's my best. So, I mean, we got linemen in the NFL running that right now. So
exactly. Yeah, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, my story is really similar in that, like, I had to definitely transition from being known as an athlete to all of a sudden trying to find myself. And I think throughout this process, I'm constantly trying to find myself because, I wanted to be a doctor when I first went to college, and then, general chemistry happened. I got that C and I was like, well, I'm not getting into med school after this.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? So I fell into nutrition, and, as a registered dietitian now, I just fell in love with the role of culture and love in food and the science behind it. And really just going with it, because you and I are literally jack of all trades in that I think that we represent not only just being diverse, but also diverse males in the dietetics career field. I think we're like 0.5.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a rarity where we're at right now.
You know what I mean? So, and it's something that has been really healing for me to understand, because I've always felt like I was different, in the best of ways. I always felt like I wanted something more than other people. I'm right now I'm in the studio of a really good friend of mine, Tyler Lopez, here in Tucson, Arizona. We grew up in some of the same parts, and we really, resonate with one another in that not a whole lot of people want to do what we're doing, which is just being more. And I think, Matt, you and I share that same ideal with just wanting to do more and wanting to be more. And so let's talk about you and your kid. Let's talk about what your kid means to you. I'll talk about what my daughter means to me. Because again, this is a podcast for the Men of Purpose podcast, right? Like these dads of purpose podcasts, tell me about your kid. Tell me about what it means for you to be a father, and we'll kind of just go from there.
Oh man. First I gotta thank my wife and the support that my wife brings and what she brings to the table. That's definitely my partner in crime on everything. And everything that happens with my son, like that stuff wouldn't be possible even without her support and even the moves that we're doing. But everything as far as what my son means to me, man, I wouldn't change it for the world. And it's literally entirely the world. From the moment that he came out and I yelled out, and they told me it was a boy.
Wait, you didn't know beforehand?
So I kind of did, but
you just playing roulette? Dude, you're crazy.
So it was one ear. Look, honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you. It was one year after the other. I was there at all of the appointments. But literally, I was not getting sleep because I was studying for my PhD, and also I had baseball, which is basically a high revenue sport. So the teams that I had, like between that and also that, and making sure my wife is happy, like man, my brain was all the way just all over the place.
Yeah.
So I knew, but then it was official that it was a boy once I seen that little tallywhacker come out. So they said it was
Tallywhacker. I don't know if I've ever heard that reference to a penis.
Sometimes they may say it's a girl or it's a boy. Say, I don't know. Maybe
dude, I feel successful. I said the word penis in one of our first podcasts.
Yes, drop the T word.
Yeah. I love it.
But yeah, he's everything, man. He's the reason why, I don't give up on anything. And also just trying to give him everything and all the opportunities that my dad tried so hard to give me, my brothers. But there are some circumstances that you can't control, especially depending on what environments that you come from as well. And you can try your hardest, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. But just seeing him and seeing him every day and just waking up to that every day, like it's everything. It's my reason why.
Yeah.
And it helps me understand like why my dad made the sacrifices he did for us as well.
Yeah.
So as far as with Kingston, man, I mean, like I said, that's my heart, man.
Yeah.
So Kingston, I just hope one day that what I'm doing today, he can be and do a part of being a piece of the puzzle to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
If it's something small, short, minute, whatever it may be, just him doing right by people, and also him finding his purpose in this world. As I'm trying to still search and find my purpose in this world, like I feel like I know a direction, but I'm just, like I said, I'm just enjoying life and taking it day by day and enjoying my time with my little man.
Yeah.
So no matter how tired I am, man, no matter how tired I am, no matter how down I am, and actually he's the reason why, I feel like I didn't fall into a serious slump when I lost my dad.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yes, me and my brothers, we was all there for each other. My mom as well, there for my mother and everything. But this little dude, seeing him every day, holding that little dude and everything too as well, helped me, remember, you gotta keep going. This is what your dad would want. This is what Pops would want.
Yeah.
So you gotta make sure that you hold his honor and make sure that you're showing him what it means to be a man.
Yeah. Man, I think that right there is huge because, and this isn't really a knock on people who don't have kids. It's not to alienate them in this way, but for those that are parents, and especially in my life, there have been times in the short 3.5 years that Rory has been born that I've really struggled, and I think when you are purposeful and you want to pass on that legacy of love and presence and all the really wonderful things like authenticity. I think, especially in my case, Rory is a huge anchoring force to remind me that most of the time it is not about me.
Yeah, well said.
You know what I mean? If I'm struggling, if I'm in an area where I'm not living authentically to who I want to be, her beautiful little smiling face reminds me like, hey, like I'm the next legacy. So what are some ways in which you want to teach me to be a better person in the world? And it's funny too, because at 3.5, she's at this really great school that we love. And we just had our parent teacher conference, and the teacher was like, she's great. She's a wonderful human. And you know what? Like the thing that might be of some concern is like, she doesn't really know letters. And my wife and I look at each other and was like, well, she's a great person, right? Like, yeah, she's wonderful. Like, okay, well, the letters, the math, all that shit's going to come later. Like just right now, like I want her to develop into a great person because that's what we're trying to do at home.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that if we look at the bigger picture of trying to make sure that we are leaving a legacy that we're proud of, I think it has everything to do with how we treat one another, especially my wife and I at home, and teaching her what healthy relationships look like. So I love the fact that you mentioned, your wife, in the first, when I asked you, like, tell me about Kingston, you're like, no, well, let me tell you about my wife first.
It's sometimes some people, that slips up, but you have to put your relationship. I feel like you have to put, in my personal opinion, I feel like you have to put your relationship first. That relationship is what blossoms the beautiful.
Yeah.
The child or your relationship or even your blessings that you have.
Yeah.
Coming about. So that relationship is the first foremost thing that's going to allow those things to happen. if that situation is not good, if that relationship is not fruitful, if that relationship is not, happy, joyful, or whatever else you want to use as far as in the vocabulary to put into a relationship, then nothing else is going to, it's not that's not going to matter, but it's not going to come out the way that you want it.
Yeah. Man, Matt, if you listen to this, bro, I miss talking to you. For those that didn't know, Matt is now the lead performance dietitian over at LSU. Go Tigers. The man is in the SEC. He's doing big things now. So, wow, that was our first episode. And it was kind of just like me and Matt, we had met for like a year prior to this, like on Zoom calls, just randomly talking about like, what could we discuss? How could we build this? How can we collaborate? And I think one day we just decided like, hey, let's just go ahead and record a pod. I had a really great local friend that had a dope studio. Like this place was so dope. If you've ever seen the pictures, and you're actually going to see this on a lot of our socials, because I'm going to be going back over like really big times in the pod of the last 100 episodes. But the man's studio, you're going to see a couple images. He had a golden mic. Shout out to you, Tyler. Shout out to Odin, two friends of the pod who helped really start this pod. But yeah, so that was a really great moment for me. And so as we head into this next clip with Chris Flo, I believe it was episode, I want to say 22. This was the first time that I had a writer on. And for those that didn't know, I mean, writing is always something to me in the same way that podcasting has been. It's always something that I overthink. It's always something that I'm like, this isn't good enough. I have a great deal of imposter syndrome that tends to come up for me when it comes to this. And so to have Chris Flo on, I had him on a previous pod, but he was actually someone, when I first started my social media account, he was someone that I really, really looked up to. And to be able to not only celebrate his first book launch, but to get him to dive into some of the values that he's teaching his kids and a lot of the values that he wants to teach others in a lot of his writings, I thought it was natural that this man had to hit our all-star episodes over the last 100. So Chris, man, you're the best. We'll make sure that we put everyone's information in the show notes if you want to go ahead and follow these people. Give Chris a big shout out. Buy his book. Book is absolute fire. If you are trying to instill value systems in your life, if you're a parent now or going to be a parent, or even if you have the next generation kind of in your thoughts as a mentor, this is the perfect book to do this. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. I'll hit you on the other side of this one. Man, that's so funny that you say that, because I resonate with that, Chris, because I'm the same way. Like, get me on video. Like any video work that I've ever done, like I don't write a script. It's like, dude, just let me go. One take wonder. Like let me just stream of consciousness. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't work out in the same way with writing. It very much looks like a fifth grader wrote it. Like my mom is an English teacher, so all throughout my life she would read things like Desi, this doesn't make sense.
That's the argument, man.
Yeah, and as you're talking about it, dude, for me at least, thank God for Grammarly. I do my $250 subscription each year and just send it off, and like they digitize it and everything. So
nice.
I'm glad, man. I'm glad. So I know, obviously, for our listeners that are listening right now, probably have heard the first episode when we kind of touched on it. So Chris, tell us about the book, the title of the book. Tell us what inspired you to write it, and then we'll obviously get into like some of the big principles and pillars that I was like, damn, this is gold.
Yeah, so I have a copy here, so you guys see. Boom. So the title of the book is Build Your Legacy. I actually ran home to get one because I had forgot it today. Yeah. So the title is Build Your Legacy. As you notice on the cover, there's there's 18 principles in the book, and so it's 18 bricks on the cover. And so that represents the foundation. And then the one on top, that's for whoever, my kids, in my case, my children, to then build the rest. So we're putting the foundation down for them. So the inspiration behind the book was, for me, was my kids. When my first son was born, or my girl was pregnant, I wanted to leave something for him to understand where he comes from. I hear, and I'm sure you, with your family, you hear stuff all the time. Oh, your grandfather used to do this, or your great grandfather, they always said this. And you hear these stories, and they're beautiful stories. But they get diluted as they go down from generation to generation. Yeah. And so I heard these stories about my grandfather or my great grandfather through family members, and they would tell me certain things. Like my dad's dad would tell me certain stuff, And it was like, I wanted my kids to have that somewhere where they can read it and always go back to it, rather than having to call me up and be like, Dad, remember what he used to say? You know, whatever.
Yeah.
So I want it to be something where, all right, he's going to have some parameters on the type of person we, dare I say, expect him to be. Like, he's going to be his own man, but here's the guidelines of the rules of what our family stands for. And so now when you leave this house, it's up to you to represent that. And here's kind of like your bylaws, or like, you know, I don't want to go into religion, but you have your Bible. Here are the 10 commandments that you don't break, and you kind of stay within this realm. And so I wanted something like that for my son. And so I sat down with my girl. I sat down with my parents, just conversations with her parents. And so just a kind of mixture of everything we got, and narrowed it down to 18 principles. And so that's what the whole book, the premise of the whole book is.
I love it, man, because I think, you know, one really big thing that I really resonate with from a value perspective is legacy, right? And so you start the book with describing legacy. So you kind of already did with the bricks and leaving the brick on top for them to kind of build their own foundation from your foundation. So Chris, talk to me about legacy. What does legacy mean for you? You did a really great job in the book of like talking about your grandfather, how he had a stogie in his mouth, but he never ever smoked it. It just was there, right? So tell me about legacy, man. What does that mean, and where does it come from for you?
For me, it comes from our ancestors, and also for the future, right? I think every family has a thing. I feel like back in the day, you know, if you look at like Game of Thrones or something like that, right? If Starks, you know, they have something they stand for. Yeah. You know, the Lannisters have something they stand for. Like, everyone knows when you hear a certain name what it stands for. And so I wanted to make sure we had that in writing for my family, because it's like, this is what we stand for. If you interact with our family, you're going to expect these types of people to come out of it. They're going to expect these principles, these values. You want this moral compass from our family. And so for me, that word legacy, that's what it touches upon, where, you know, we need to have a solid root. I think, again, I was talking to a friend yesterday. I don't remember the woman's name. I believe it's Victoria Woolf. That had this quote that said, "I'm rooted, but I flow." And for me, that perfectly describes legacy, because it's like, you have your roots. Like, my son's roots will be this book and what my grandfather and my girl's dad has taught them and instilled in them, and what we instill in them. Those are going to be their roots, their foundation. But they're still going to be able to flow through life. But they need this foundation. I feel like a lot of kids are lacking that. So people are chasing things because they don't have a foundation. They don't have a legacy they represent. So they're spinning their wheels trying to create something, but without any kind of compass of where to go. They're just going in 100 different directions. Like, one of the principles in there is the direction determines destination. And so they have no direction, so they don't know where the destination is. So they're just chasing. And so legacy is like, here's your direction. You choose the destination, but here's the direction we're going to push you in. And so that, to me, is what defines or symbolizes legacy.
Chris, damn you! I actually took note on that chapter. So you mentioned it. So let's go ahead and dive into that. So what I thought was really cool was you had talked about the not so much the differences, but the differences between destination, right, and definition. And you talked about
that's another one you're talking about. All right,
and you talked about an analogy in there of like the word sexy.
Yeah.
Right. And I think what you're talking about there too is just, it's so perfect, because what does happen if you're not anchored somewhere is that you do end up chasing certain things. And I think a lot of our podcast listeners and those who are going to see this on video can really resonate with that, is you find yourself chasing things that you really don't think are going to fulfill what you need in the long run, but instant gratification will show you like, okay, that might work. So can you dive into that principle, man, and also just that analogy with like the term sexy? Because I think you kind of just touched on it. It was literally one of my notes, man. I love it.
That's so funny, man. And I'm laughing because a friend of mine, actually, she read the book and she was like, "Tell me more about that." And it was just funny that's the one you brought up. So basically, it's like, the change is inevitable in life, right? So it's either you're gonna have to know when to change your definition and when to change your destination. And so what I talked about with that was, when I was younger, the word sexy to me was the hot girl in the club. So you're chasing these girls in a nightclub. I used to work in nightclubs teaching salsa lessons. So I worked like every Friday I was in the club working. So if you've been to a nightclub once, imagine every single Friday for like 2 years. That's your life, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So you meet the one girl and you'd be like, oh, everyone, this is the person. I got to have this person. Let me get a phone number,
Yeah.
whatever. And then like you try to hook up with them or whatever. And then every weekend it's another, you're trying to chase something. And you think that if I can only hang out with her or date her, then I'm gonna be good. And then you date that person, you realize they're shallow or you're shallow or whatever. It just doesn't work for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And then you jump to the next and you keep changing your destination, thinking that that's going to fulfill you. So sometimes what you have to do is change your definition.
Yeah.
So for me, the definition had to change where once I found out who I was, and that's the most important thing, find self first, then it's like, okay, that's not really what I define as sexy. Like for now, it's like I have 2 kids. Like my girl's, she's working, she's helping it obviously at the house. So we're changing diapers. I'm giving one a bath while she's feeding the other kid. And so now I had to change my definition of sexy. Like that's sexy. The fact she's able to balance working with the kids, having fun with my kids, reading to my kids at night. Like that stuff becomes like, wow, this is a great person. And now that becomes way more attractive. But it's important to know that it's not wrong, the other version. It depends where you're at in life. And so the same thing with the word success. How many people define success as making $1 million and doing X, Y, and Z? And they define it like that. And if they don't make that, they start changing careers and they keep changing paths. Rather than like right now, I'm not making the money I used to make, which you read in the book. I don't make that kind of money anymore, but I'm successful. I'm actually happier now than I ever was before.
Yeah.
Because I changed my definition of success. Now success to me is time with the family, just being able to hang out, close friends, sitting around a fire pit, doing podcasts with people like you. This makes me successful in my eyes. So this is my definition. Like, it's not you saying, hey, I'll be in your podcast, pay me $5,000 and I'll show up. Like, it's not the same, right? For me anyway. Again, other people, that's their definition. That's cool. But I think it's important to understand those two differentiations between the two.
Whew. Absolute fire. If you want to hear the rest of that episode, I made a mistake. It's not 22. It is episode 26. Make sure you go over there and listen to the full one. Any of these clips that I'm showing you, I'm going to cut off in a really great place because I actually want you to go back to the pod and listen to the full one. So you know me by now, like I'm giving you homework constantly. So make sure that you go back to episode 26 and listen to that full episode, that full conversation. It's it's a lot of mind effery in the way that it starts to help you to evaluate your current values and what your values have to do with the success and anything that you're pouring yourself into. So, for a lot of reasons, that obviously made the all-star episode. Now, as we look at this next one, I think this has to continue to be one of the fan favorites. Jessica Isaacs, you know her then as the UCLA performance dietitian. She is now the performance dietitian for the Los Angeles Clippers. Our girl is in the show. She's actually going to be coming on over the summer as we head into season 7, just to talk about the transition, what it was like, what it's like to put yourself out there. There's just so much about Jess that I love, and she has actually grown to be a phenomenal friend. One of these days we're going to meet in real life. I'm putting it out in the universe. It'll happen. But with this episode, obviously, this has become a fan favorite. This was a really intentional, vulnerable talk between the two of us. And I was so thankful for Jess for really the trust and safety of being able to dive into this. I know that this conversation for her has one that's been really important because I believe that she is taking this opportunity and really just continue to be intentional about putting herself out there, continuing to be vulnerable, continuing to work on her mental health, continuing to work on her recovery. There's just like so much about her from an individual, a human that I love. And so one of the fan favorites for sure. You knew this was going to make it on our all-star episode, the last 100. Without further ado, Jessica Isaacs, let's get it.
Sure. It was definitely a learning process because when I was going through recovery, so she was 5 and she, just straight up and down a beanpole, just a tall, skinny kid. But she would stand in front of the mirror and pick at her skin and like pick at fat that wasn't even there and just say things about her body. And I'm like, YouTube shows or anything like that at this point. So where is this coming from? And I knew that it had to have been from me. But at that time, you know, I wasn't going through my dietetics program or my nutrition education program. So I didn't even know like the right things to say or not to say. But I knew that there were certain words that I had to take out of my language. So I took like the word fat out of our language. You know, we don't say words like that. There's just certain ways that we talk about people and we talk about things. When you know, when I was growing up, my parents, if we saw there's a big overweight person in public, you know, my parents would point and look, you know, and that's something that I realized, oh gosh, you know, I have that instinct to do, but that's not because that's the way I feel. That's something that someone else has implanted in me. And I had to kind of really look at all of the take you know, inventory and take stock of all the things that all my feelings and all my reactions and all the words that I was saying, and really start to kind of clean that up. And so, you know, I started there. I started really not letting my daughter see if, you know, I was still kind of doing some diety kind of stuff, not letting her really see that, not having those conversations with her about that, and talking about the body, about, you know, gosh, your body is so strong. Look at all the things. You're so good at soccer. Look how strong your legs are. Look at how fast you are. And talking about ourselves in a way that was different than how our body looks, because that doesn't matter. And we put so much,
such a huge emphasis on it. And it like takes our joy. It literally sucks it out. Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's so influential too. And I wonder, you know, you kind of talked about going through hard times during that time, right? And I wonder, like for me, one of the driving forces has always continued to be like my little girl, right? When I really struggle, it's like, hold on, like you're trying to set a precedent. You're trying to lead a legacy that you're really proud of, right? And so just for you, like, I wonder if you can talk a bit more about like what role your daughter has played in your life, and also some of the hardest times that you've had to go through, and what that meant to be like, oh, like I got to do something better for my little girl. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I mean, everything. My daughter's been everything. I mean, oh gosh, where's the tissues at? Because I'm gonna start crying, Desi.
Are you ready? I'll cry with
Here we go, Desi. No, so you know, everything. She's been everything, you know, and the reason why I'm still here. Your viewers probably can't see, but I have this like, where's my camera? I have this, I can't even find it. I have this tattoo on my arm. It's this dragonfly. And I got that for I got that to symbolize my daughter after I tried to take my life. Sorry. But if I didn't have her, if I didn't have a reason to do better, a reason to want more out of life, I wouldn't be here. Yeah. So my daughter's been everything.
I share so much. Jess, straight up, thank you so much. Like I appreciate the vulnerability. I share so much of what you're talking about, you know, because there are moments where I'm just like, fuck, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm fucking this up. Like I
like, that all the time. Where's the book that tells us how to do this right? Where's the book?
No, because it's so true. Because like people ask me like, hey, like Des, like why do you do what you do? Like, how are you so passionate all the time? I'm like, look, man, like. I wish that I had what I'm doing when I first started, because God, man, parenting is such a vulnerable experience. And, you know, my wife and I just celebrated our second anniversary this past May. And it's just, there's no book, right? Yeah. And you have all this past conditioning and these things that you like really have to unlearn. It's so fucking hard.
Yeah. Like you have your parents as an example, and then you decide like, okay, I liked what my parents did here, or I hated what my parents did here. Yeah. And you try to do it different, but you don't know if it's going to work out. You just know how you are. You're like, I know I'm fucked up. So like, how do I not fuck up my kid? Right. Like that's all I know is like, this wasn't the answer. This wasn't the recipe. or functioning adult, or maybe it was the recipe, and I had to figure it out myself. Maybe that's the message, is that you do the best you can for your kids, and you just hope that they have enough of tenacity, of enough spirit to figure it out. But gosh, I really want to set her off on a much better foot in life, and how she feels about herself than, gosh, how I did.
Yeah. Mental health is hard, because in order to truly get to that place where you're able to recognize that you, especially for me, growing up in a Latino home, like, you don't talk about hard things. It's like the family knows, but no one really talks about it. You might have a couple people who might ask if you're okay, but mainly it's like, don't talk about it. And then just, even just with the male culture as well, like the very toxic masculinity, it's like, go provide, shut the hell up. And mental health is really hard. And you talked about like this moment where you were about to take your life, right? And it really struck a chord with me, because I've had that moment as well. And it came back to like, who do I want to become in order to be better? What sort of role do I want to have in my daughter's life? Because shit, she's not going to be okay if I'm not here. Right. And so, just for you, can you kind of go back to that moment? Like, what was going on in your life at that time?
Sure. So at that time, marriage was coming to an end. I was, in a relationship, married for like 8 years. I had just finished my dietetics degree, just landed my first like dietetics job. Things were going well. It seemed like I was working in a private practice. I was even maybe going to make 6 figures that year. Like, things were looking good. Things were looking good. And I was like, this is it. I found it.
Yeah.
But I had this relationship that wasn't working. We had grown apart for a long time, and feeling more like roommates than partners. And I think we were fighting against each other for a long time. And so we were going through divorce, and we split. And he tried to take my daughter, and he's not her biological father. He tried to take her, and she said she didn't want to be with me. And so for me, I was like, well, God, here I am. I'm doing it. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve, but at home, nobody's with me.
Yeah.
And it was because I wasn't with me.
Yeah.
It's because I was doing everything for everybody else, and trying to please everybody else all the time, but I wasn't taking care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw that. So even though I had done all this work coming from the eating disorder recovery since she was young, and now she was like 12, 13 at this time. So it's been a while. And I mean, I had just let her down. I let her down. I wasn't me again, or I was, in a depression, in a funk. And so, I tried to take my life, and, gosh, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And what happened was I had a few phone calls, and I went back home, and my parents were there, and I hadn't seen my mom in like 10 years. And she's sitting on my couch, and I had a bad relationship with my mom for like my whole life. And she's sitting there on my couch, and she knew she didn't really she hadn't been there for me for a long time. So she knew that she really didn't want, she just wanted to be there for support. She wanted to show that she was there to help. And now I moved out to California, and now we have like the best relationship in the world. It's just like, it's been like a complete like 180. But yeah, so I think I had to get back in touch with me, and actually maybe even find me, find out who's Jessica, what lights Jessica up. I'm on this path doing these things because it felt like the right thing to do. I'm doing the nutrition path because it felt like the thing that I was passionate about for the first thing in my life. I'm in this relationship, and I'm married because I've got, we've got a great family unit. And I'm just doing the things that I've been told I should do my whole life. And I had to navigate away from that. And I blew up my life. And I started all over. I came out to California on a 4-week temporary contract and just hoped things would work out. But for the first time in my life, I stopped really planning, and I stopped like stressing about stuff, and I just like kind of like took my felt that like if I just led with my heart, that I would find the right way.
Hey, how you like my timing? There's a reason why I'm doing this, okay? I need you to go back to these episodes and listen to the full one, all right? So that episode with Jessica Isaacs, again, it was a really great opportunity to dive into a lot of vulnerability, and I'm just so thankful for her, like I said at the beginning of this, just to, just for being able to describe to us what it's like to love yourself first and what that feels like. So Jess, thank you so much. Please do yourself the favor. Go back to episode 42 to listen to the full conversation. This next one, I want to say that it's not my favorite, and mostly because of what it represented. Now, let me kind of paint a picture for you. It's November, more or less, of last year. I had gone through this big rebrand, and maybe to you, you're like, "Oh, cool, Des, you changed the podcast name." Like, all right, I like the art. I wish it was that easy. For anyone out there who has ever gone through an evolution or a change or a rebrand, like it taps into your soul. Okay. And so this rebrand for me was really big because what it meant is I was going to take myself out of just offering fat loss and nutrition coaching, because I felt a deeper calling to help high performers in a way where we're establishing habits and rituals and systems to help them embody the type of people that they need to become in order to see the other areas of their life and things that they're pouring into to represent their healthiest self. And so with this next episode, this, going back to November of last year in 2021, it was the first time that I launched an idea. And going up to it, and you're really only going to hear a small snippet, and I wanted to put it on here because what it represents is what it's like to fail. God, I fucking hate saying it right now. It represented what it was like to fail. A little background: I have not shared this with any of you, really. I launched this program, and it was such fire. God damn it! Like it was so good. I felt so good about it. I launched it. Crickets. Literally, my worst fear of no one joining happened. And I told myself, and I was talking about it in the pod, and maybe you can kind of get the sense, I told myself that if for some reason my worst fear happened, that no one would join and no one would buy, that I was going to go away for the weekend. I was going to leave my phone. I was going to go off the grid. And I told my wife this too, like, hey, if this does happen, I'm not trying to put this out there, but I do need to think about the possibility of this being a huge and massive failure. And so if this does happen, I'm going to go to the mountains and I'm just going to check out, and, I'll be back on Monday. I'll be safe. I just need to readjust my life. And it just so happened that as this episode that you're about to hear was getting released, I kind of knew the writing on the wall. And I ended up having to do some real big inner self work. I felt like such a huge failure, and it was a hard moment for me. But now that I look back, being, more or less 6 months removed, it kind of taught me that failure isn't the worst thing. You actually learn a lot from your failure. And if the ground level of failure for me is no one joining, and it literally can only go up from here. So why not continue to honor your ideas? That failure didn't kill me. I thought it was going to, but it didn't. I dusted myself off. I connected with some of the things that I really, really enjoyed. And I mean, in a lot of ways, I have continued to keep it moving. Next idea, next passion. How can I pour into the people that I have now? Like, what can I do in order to make this something that I'm super proud of? And so, yeah, this is the first time I'm talking about this failure, but this also reminded me that failure is not the worst thing. It might feel like it, but it's not. And I survived. And from that point on, the culmination of this 100th episode, like, this is a product of that. Hey, Des, That sucked. Get up, keep going. Honor your ideas, honor your passions. So here's a small snippet of that moment for me. I'm super thankful for it now. Then I fucking hated it, but now I'm super thankful for it. The foundation is left in your habits and they're left in your routines. And so for someone who is trying to step in to their healthiest self so that they can help others, this past year for me, just like with a lot of people, especially the past 2 years, has been really tough because at least 2021 has helped me to expose certain areas of darkness that maybe I kind of knew that I should look at, but really in a lot of ways that I should look at for longevity, right? And I've talked in different episodes about being sober curious, and I've talked about in different episodes about disconnecting and overworking and really what that means. And for me, it's just an ongoing thing where it's like, you know what? If I'm going to show up as my healthiest self, I need to make sure that I'm looking at some of those darkness areas and I'm looking at areas that I can continue to improve. And it's not only just about being the best entrepreneur that I can be or the best person that I can be, but it goes into being the best husband that I can be, being the best father that I can be. Because, I mean, for a lot of us, I'm sure as you're listening to this or you're watching this on IGTV or even our YouTube channel, I'm sure that we can all agree that like our parents did the best that they could with what they had, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. And it's kind of the same thing here. And now that, like, as I start to at least expose some of those areas of ongoing improvement, I honestly, like, for me at least, the biggest thing that I've wanted to do, especially over the past year, is to show up as my healthiest self, in my business, in my messaging, in my podcast, in fatherhood, in being a husband, in being a person, all of those things. Because to me, like that's the natural high. It really honestly is, because what it helps me to do is to truly connect with who that person is and to really fall in love with that person. And I've been very clear about this too. For someone who is, in their journey towards self love and trying to navigate their own version of self doubt and imposter syndrome, I think it's super imperative for us to have that conversation about how to love ourselves. And I don't think that it happens enough, right? And so, in a lot of ways, over the past year, this has been an ongoing thing. I mean, I would probably say really a lot of my life. But over the past 30 days, I was kind of thinking about like, all right, I want to do something really special. I know the holidays are coming up, and I know every registered dietitian out there is going to be talking about how to navigate the holidays and how to do this in a different way. And if I'm being honest, like I really love the food aspects about what I do, but even pushing it further, it's like, if your resume, if your routine says that you are taking care of yourself to the best of your ability on a day-to-day basis, you're able to connect with your feelings and you're able to navigate the routines needed. A holiday here, a holiday there is really not going to provide you with much of a speed bump, because this is where true enjoyment and fulfillment gets to happen. If your habits and your routines are in place, one meal is not going to make or break your nutrition if that's what's important to you, right? If your habits and routines are in place and your healthy connections around you, you're navigating those on an ongoing basis. A holiday or possibly a hard conversation that you have to have with a family member, or possibly a boundary that you have to set with a significant other or a coworker or a family member, whatever that is, it's really not going to provide you with much of a speed bump, because your habits and routines are going to be your resume. And I think that's one thing that I've been really passionate about helping not only just people who are in our one-to-one group programs, um, but something that I do personally in life. It's like really navigating a habits and really instilling a level of confidence with a lot of the people that I work with to help them to understand, like, no, like I'm on a trajectory. I'm on a trajectory for fulfillment. I'm on a trajectory of navigating my mental health. I'm on a trajectory of just being my highest and healthiest and happiest self. So I don't really need to worry about uh, Thanksgiving or the December holidays, and then obviously the new year. I don't have to worry about setting goals that I never stick to in 2022 like I have in the past years, because I'm doing that currently. And I also have a mentor that I'm getting to do life with that gets to help me and guard me from myself at some times. And so in a lot of ways, when I was trying to develop this, I was like, all right, what am I seeing from the standpoint of going through the years that I have, when I first started with eating disorders, like, all right, there's a mental health component here. There's a lack of connectivity here. Like there's something. And even as I started working in professional baseball, it was kind of the same thing. Like, all right, the most successful athletes are the ones that are the most purposeful and the ones that are able to navigate their habits and the routines in a way where they just don't stop. They get the mentorship that they need. They get the coaching that they need. Like, all right, let's just keep going. And even just at the community level too, for people who have not been able to understand generational trauma, they themselves don't really understand what the impact of colonization has had on them, what the impact of white supremacy has had on them, right? And so there's just so much that goes into how people interact with their habits. And as I was trying to really create this, I was like, all right, I'm going to pull on all of my experiences and I'm going to throw myself out there and really be true to what I wanted to do. Because at the beginning of last year, and we'll probably talk about this on the pod. So obviously with this year, we transferred into the Can't Believe I Made It podcast because I really wanted to help from the standpoint of creating habits and routines. And I also wanted to talk about your own hero's journey, which is why we have guests on talking about their own hero's journey. So when we were the Men of Purpose podcast, I remember I ended up doing a group call with a lot of our clients. And I said, okay, I've been doing this New Year's Eve letter exercise, and it's something that's been really near and dear to my heart. And if I'm being perfectly honest, when I do it with you all as clients, it's incredibly revelational from the standpoint of providing you with clarity, with doing things that are not only uncomfortable, but navigating clarity with why you want certain goals in your life. Trying to uplift and trying to create purpose behind what you're doing. And so this past year, I wrote it and I was like, you know what? I really would love to give more time to my clients. I would really love to do that. And in doing so, I also recognize that because, and let's be honest, being able to work with a mentor like myself, being able to be in a community like a lot of the people that we have and the experience that we have, it's going to be an investment of your time, your finances, and your grit. There's a lot. And I also understand that as I'm speaking to you as a high performer, you can probably recognize that you're at a certain level. For some listening to this, you're a high performer, you're a really successful entrepreneur, you're a really successful, career person, and you possibly also have a family, and you recognize that in order for your family to have success, in order for the things that you're involved with to have success, that you're going to have to navigate your needs in a healthier way, right? And for other levels, you're really trying to level up as a high performing human. And whether that is career, your creative project, whatever that is, you're noticing that you're not taking care of yourself. And so as I'm speaking to you, I just kind of want you to sit back and observe not only some of what I'm saying, but also observe what I'm saying and how it impacts where you are right now currently in your life. Okay. So as I'm doing this, it's like, okay, how do I help these people? And so when I was writing my letter this past year, I was like, all right, I having 40 clients was great. I noticed that I really wanted to give more time and more energy to the people that were investing in themselves in this way. So I said to myself, like, okay, I don't want 40 anymore. What I want is 10 to 15 people that I can really pour into on almost on a day-to-day basis. And because I also recognize that I'm not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. I also want to make sure that there's different levels of people that I can help. And so I wanted to launch 2 digital products. And so the first digital product that I'm excited to talk to you about today is our Radical Responsibility program. And as I was developing this, I was trying to come up with something that could be extremely beneficial from the standpoint of helping you to understand that if in fact you're in a place where you are stuck. And if you're listening to this podcast, I can already assume that not only is this not your first episode, and if this is your first episode, welcome. I'm so excited to have you. Please continue on and share this pod if it resonates with you. All right. So going back to speaking to you as a listener and the viewer, you're likely in this place where you're noticing that something just isn't right. And that's okay. So as I was trying to develop going back to the goals that I set this past year, I was like, all right, cool. I want to develop 2 digital products because there's only one of me. And I would love to expand on the type of impact that I have with people, across the board. And that's been really important for me. Okay. And so as I was releasing this, it was such a vulnerability project. And in so many ways, what I was seeing was just very intentional, value-based, high-performing people that were not getting their needs met and honestly didn't know how to get their needs met. And any of my current clients and past clients can tell you that most of the time when we chat, we are chatting probably 80 to 85% about their mental health, about what has kept them stuck, about how to unlearn that. And it starts to become a mental and emotional conditioning thing where it's like, let me teach you the habits in order to be successful. And then, even more so, let me teach you how to be persistent, how to create grit for yourself, and really, in so many ways, how to create self love. And so, with this radical responsibility experience and program that just got released this past week, and doors are going to be closing here this Friday on the 26th. I just wanted to take this pod, and usually with our Mondays, it's usually Mentorship Monday. So I'm actually going to combine our Mentorship Monday for this launch today, and then obviously our Friday podcast. So I'm personally going to take off the weekend because it's much needed. I'm going to spend time with family. I'm going to watch football till my eyes bleed, and it's going to be something that I'm going to be excited to do. And on that Friday, I'm going to be taking that Friday off and just putting away a couple hours here and there for client calls, just to continue to provide support. So this week's pod, if you will, is going to be packaged into your Mentorship Monday, and then also our longer pod. So this is not going to be your 15-minute pod. So if you're someone who is waiting for this Mentorship Monday to be 15 minutes, feel free to listen to the first half and then throw the other half when you go on your walk, because you already know by now I'm already pushing you to take care of yourself, because no one else is going to do that for you. Like I said, very, very small snippet of the episode. I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarity on what that was. And, even looking back, 6 months removed, I'm so thankful for that moment and this episode too, because it reminded me that it's okay to fail. What's worse is not getting back up and trying again. What's worse is never starting. I've lived that life. I don't want to go back there. I am not the fullest version of myself in that place. I am not okay from a mental health perspective. It's just not pretty. So, yeah, that moment sucked. And no failure is ever something that you're going to wish upon yourself. And at the same time, it taught me so much about failure and why failure is okay. So, we're carrying that into another one of my favorite episodes. Probably the most vulnerable one that I've been on. You kind of know, as a pod host, like, I'm not really going to shy away from telling my story. But damn. This next episode 77. The 5 things I want to teach my baby boy when he comes into this world. For any of us who have past parent wounds, this will dig in you a little bit, because it did me. I'm okay with expressing vulnerability. And as I record this small little interlude on Friday, the 22nd of April, and my baby boy is due in about, 60 days or so, there's something about having a baby boy that just brought up a lot in me and continues to do so. And I know in a lot of ways, he is really going to help me heal that dad wound. And so this had to make the All-Star episodes of the last 100. So small snippets, just like all the other episodes. But I hope you enjoy the 5 things that I want to teach my baby boy. If you want to listen to the full episode, again, go back to 77 to hear the full one. Let's get it. Alluded to what I wanted to talk about today, and with it being 2022 and some changes coming about, I just figured that this might be a really good opportunity to get real vulnerable, and maybe create a project that possibly can live on for latter days, if you will. And so in so many ways, I was trying to think about and getting geared up for this pod. And I knew, and we'll kind of get into why this is going to be a vulnerable project for me. Any of this really has been vulnerable. And I think as listeners, you probably already know what the story is, right? Coming up to this. And now that we're at episode 77, I mean, we're gearing more toward episode 100. And I think in my head, I was like, all right, I'm going to find a way to try to get to episode 100. Then I'll decide what to do from there. I got to be honest with you all as listeners. I love fucking doing this. I love it. It is It is so fun. It challenges me. I get to talk to amazing people. I get to teach. I get to educate. I get to mentor. It like serves all the purposes. And so with 2022 obviously underway, I'm really excited about what this year is going to present, and I hope that you have the same excitement. Maybe that there's a lot of uncertainty, which I think is really normal. But I hope that in the uncertainty, you're finding that there is some comfort in the challenge of rising to whatever occasion is coming up in your life, and really pushing you to be the hero in your own hero's journey. Trying to create that main character energy that I've been motivating and mentoring you to do. But at the same time, like as a listener right now, you kind of know, you have untapped potential within you, and you have so much potential within you that really phenomenal things can happen if you truly start to prioritize yourself. And that's really what this podcast is about. So I figured, as a gift to you all, to myself, to who I'm going to introduce here in a bit, I felt like this would be really cool. Each and every year I write myself this phenomenal New Year's letter. My therapist, and I've probably told the story on the pod, I'm going to tell it again. But if you've already heard it, you can fast forward. um, about 8 years ago, I had started, ongoing therapy. Before that, I had seen someone at 18 trying to figure out just life stuff. My parents had just gotten divorced. It was like, I wasn't doing well, or just kind of stuff like that. It was really intermittent, nothing really consistent. But 8 years ago, my therapist had challenged me to do this New Year's letter assignment, and the whole prompt behind it is, towards the end of the new year, the goal is to write yourself a letter as if you were from the future a year from now. So, when this gets launched, it'll be Saturday, the 15th of January. So essentially, what it would be, me writing myself a letter from January 15th of 2023, really congratulating myself on all the things that I accomplished and all the things that I was intentional about. And really, in a lot of ways, it's what I have a lot of my clients do each and every year, so that we can gain some clarity. Because on my side, that's where I get to create the playbook, right? We get to look at what the person wants to be intentional about, and then we can reverse engineer back. And that's what like really gets me excited about the type of work that I do with a lot of the clients that I have right now. And I've been doing the same thing. And in a lot of ways, not only as a dietitian and a performance mentor, I'm always testing things out. And this is one thing that I've tested out, and it's tried and true. And the whole reason why I'm telling you about this is because this year, I've gotten away from strict outcomes, like financial goals. I've gotten away from follower goals, right? Subscription goals. I've gotten away from that, and it's really seen an evolution of being more intentional. And so with today, I figured that it would kind of tap into intentionality behind like what I'm working on, just so that you all can, because I'm in the trenches with you. I think that's where I just need to be very, very transparent. I am not perfect. I have my struggles. I have my vices. I do not interact with uncomfortable feelings well at sometimes, and it's my responsibility, my radical responsibility, to be in my body, to be in my mind, and to show up in all places of my life as the healthiest, happiest, and and truly highest self, right? And that's my radical responsibility. Okay, so I say all of this, and I kind of mentioned this. So if you hadn't seen it, you're hearing this for the first time. And if I had a soundboard, I would throw a huge crowd noise behind. Uh, but the cool thing about this year is my wife and I are going to be having a little baby boy at the end of June. And in so many ways, I honestly wasn't prepared for it. I really wasn't. It was definitely planned. It wasn't a surprise like our first one. This one was definitely planned. And even though it was planned in a lot of ways, I like to think of 2021 as a real year of really hard intentional growth. But another thing that came out of it too, and all of the pain and all of like, I mean, I don't want to call it disappointment, because the things that happened in last year needed to happen, right? I changed my business model. I really started going in on projects like this. I really started seeing the fruit of that labor in the long term and not just the short term, right? And so after all of those changes, with what I deemed at the end of the year, like, damn, like in how many ways did I fail? Like, how many ways did I try to create feedback here? Like, shit. One of the phenomenal things that came from it through all the pain and through all the inner work was showing up as my healthiest self. And what that did for us in our marriage was it was so tremendous because a little life was brought out of it. And that's really the truest abundance to me. Because I didn't meet certain goals that I thought I wanted to meet, and like I said, I think I've changed it from really strict hard goals and reverse engineering back, and a little bit more towards intentions. What would be a huge joy for me to look at the end of the year and be like, you know what, like you did a phenomenal job at being intentional about those things, and you created systems and habits and rituals in the same way that you teach your clients, same way that you teach podcast listeners, and anyone who is a part of this beautiful community. you know you're able to do that, and that feels good. So one of the things that came out of 2021 was obviously this beautiful life that we were able to create. And I grew up the oldest of five. There's four boys, and then my little sister Marisa. Shout out to you, Mies. um and my brothers, obviously. What up, guys? uh but there's five of us, and I think one of the things that I grew up hearing, like, more often than not, was always my mom saying, hey, you're gonna have all girls so that God can teach you patience. So in my mind, I was like, I am for sure gonna have a girl. Like, I'm gonna be a girl dad. I'm gonna be like Kobe, right? There isn't a boy in the cards for me. And when I found out, like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. And I just want permission from you all to get real vulnerable and emotional, because I've talked about a little bit about my child and a little bit about my parents. And um, while they did the best that they could, there's a lot of things that was really hard about the way that we grew up. And I'm so thankful for the bond that we all have because of it. But for me, being a dad, like, my first thought about it is, I think about my dad, phenomenal person, loving, um, intelligent, smart, pretty much grew up in the hood. Um, did the best that he could, and he got us out of that environment. And I think for so many reasons, like, he's one of my biggest heroes. And because he's one of my biggest heroes, that's also acknowledging that he wasn't perfect, and a lot of the imperfections comes a lot of the pain, right? And I think being a dad to a little boy brings up a lot of that stuff for me. So in a lot of ways, this is going to be really great. I'm scared. I think that's normal, though, right? Like, you have a life, and you want to teach them how to be good people, right? And how to love people, and how to love what they do, and all of these things. So I figured it would be a real cool episode today, kind of doing things a little bit outside the box. But I think as listeners, you've come to find that I do that. uh, Straight up, I have ADHD, so I'm just trying to hit you from all the different angles that my mind goes, to be honest. But I figured today would be a really cool project, and this is something that my son can listen to. When he's of age, possibly a teenager or something like that, we can point back to this. So, as listeners, I want you to allow me permission to be real vulnerable here. I'm going to be speaking to my son right now, and you all get to listen. And I think there's a lot of life lessons in here that we can all really resonate with, and things that you can't. Just, you're just sitting back and you're getting to listen right now. So I'm going to be, from this point on, I'm going to be referring to my son. I'm going to be talking to my son, just like as if we were having a conversation. And I think it's perfect timing. And getting geared up for this podcast was really hard because it's vulnerable. Vulnerability is hard. So yeah, this will be good, though. You'll be healing. And that's what I'm sure a lot of you as listeners are doing, some sort of healing, if it's imposter syndrome, health, business, relationships, any of that. I mean, if you are someone who has felt pain, and we all have, you understand the value of working through that in a healthier way. So, fuck, let's do this. All right, my guy. as you listen to this, you were probably going to be, I mean, I would guess you're a teenager by this point. I would guess, because your mom is not gonna your mom's not gonna let you listen to this as a young kid. Um, whew. It's, yeah, no, he's gonna listen to it at some point, and it's gonna be a cool moment, you know, whatever 15 years from now, when I'm, fuck man, I'm in my 50s, listening to my voice, you know, in my mid 30s. That's gonna be a cool moment, and I'm excited for it. So this very last episode that we are talking about in our all-star episode, the last 100, you know, I had to bring my girl Sandy back. I actually found her very randomly in a Facebook group when I posted to 40,000 some odd podcast oriented people saying, "Hey, I got this really great podcast about helping people to dive into their own hero's journey and to navigate high performance habits to bring themselves into the healthiest version of anything that they do. I'm interested in amplifying people of color and high performers who really want to chase those dreams. Anyone want to jump on?" The form that I actually released didn't work. Sandy DM'd me on IG. She DM'd me on Facebook with one of the most profound stories of where she's come from and what she is doing today. And I absolutely had to have her on. And so she's someone that, Sandy, if you're listening to this, we will meet in real life. We will become friends in real life at some point, because we connected instantly. And I'm so glad that she's going to kind of end our all-star episodes with some of the value that she provided in our episode together. As always, if you want to listen to the full one, you got to go back and make sure that you take the time to be there for episode 90. So stop overthinking it and go do it scared. Let's go. No, I absolutely love that. I mean, obviously the last 2 years has really transformed a lot of how we all connect. And, yeah, I've been incredibly grateful to have a platform and be able to connect with people like yourself, where after the conversation, the hope is like, hey, I could definitely be Sandy's friend. So I'm so glad to have you on. So Sandy, I want to ask, so this podcast is about the hero's journey. This podcast is about diving into people's habits and rituals, and really in a lot of ways, their origin story. So I guess a good place to start is, what is creating passion in your life? What are you involved in that is just like, I love this. I wake up every single freaking day and I go do this. Like, so tell me about that.
That's a great question. So I'll take you through kind of just taking a little bit of a step back, because a lot of my driving force had been there as far as what motivates and inspires me. However, it took a little bit to get to a point where I realized and pinpointed what you could say was like my why, right?
Yeah.
And at the height of the pandemic, I didn't formally introduce myself, but I am a speaker, certified health coach. I've had over 15 years in the workforce as a leader, in different capacities and in different forms. And this global pandemic hits and my company gets acquired. And
No.
And as all jokes aside, I am like one step away from a leadership position that I wanted so bad, like so bad.
Damn
And
it.
it's like, okay, you have to start over at this point, because the company's acquired. I don't know the people at the parent company, and I'm a chronic overachiever, recovering chronic overachiever. We're still in recovery, right?
Yeah.
And I literally sacrificed everything for career success. When I'm talking friends, relationships, just being even healthy. I was giving up all types of focus on living a healthy life, just overdoing it all for career success.
Yeah.
And here, all of this is happening. The company decides, look, we're going to acquire you. I come into this new company. I don't have a sense of any type of clarity. We're in a global pandemic.
Yeah.
It's just like all roads are leading to what is going on.
What is this life?
Right. so many unknowns. And I end up on the phone with a mentor, and I'm just going, like, sitting at the table, crying, all of the feels, all of the emotions. Like, I cried so much, I started getting a headache, even on the call. So I'm just going in about like how betrayed I felt, my timelines, the company did me wrong. This is out of control. And I'm going, and he stops me. He goes, Sandy, look at your phone. I looked at my phone, 18 minutes. 18 minutes since we started the call, and I was just going. And I'm so thankful now when I look back at that, because he pointed me to a scripture, and I'm a person of faith.
Yeah.
And that biblical scripture is one that says, seek first, Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Mm-hmm. He points my attention to it, and I'm like, okay, I guess. And him and I usually close out our conversations in prayer. And so he's praying for me, and I'm crying. And in my heart, I'm like, I got to surrender. I got to surrender, because even as we're on the phone, and this is like early pandemic phase, people weren't all really doing the video thing. He hadn't known. Nobody would have known in quarantine by myself at home.
Yeah.
I already gained 30 pounds at the point of that conversation.
Yeah.
Those 30 pounds meant that I was at risk for diabetes, high blood pressure, and obese. And my doctor told me this because I already knew that was my peak. So food started becoming a comfort. And as you know, as a dietitian, child, once you start eating crazy like that, your budget is out of whack. Your money, what budget, right?
It's like financial budget, and then also emotional budget too. So you're absolutely right. Yeah.
All of it. And so I am on this call. We prayed it out, and I surrendered. I was like, you know what, God, I surrender. I'm just going to go ahead, let it ride, figure out things. I trust you. And I also just made this declaration to myself. Even if I'm in corporate America, I'm like, you know what? Corporate America's ghetto. That's all. I just started saying it. I was like, it's ghetto here. It's ghetto. It's ghetto.
You guys suck. I'm out.
I was like, it's ghetto, because obviously they have their goals, they have their objectives, they have their strategic milestones. None of that has to do with my health and wellness, like my personal well-being. And so today, that's why I started getting this passion around it. I said, you know what? I'm going to help career-driven women find harmony and healing in the workplace, in their homes, and in their faith. Because so many of us think it's all about the hustle and the bustle and the work and just like climbing this ladder. But the data is clear. We're still not making the advancements we need to make. And I'm out here dehydrated. Like I'm dehydrated. I'm gaining weight. Okay. My skin is
I'm not well.
I'm not well. You want me to be well, but I'm not well. And a lot of that is because when goals are being set and strategies are being put in place, the people are like a piece of the puzzle, but they don't consider always the emotional aspect and the focus on their well-being. We're having the conversation now as the data shows, like sitting is the new smoking, while data is coming out around people wanting companies to talk about well-being, women are still not advancing at the levels they are. People of color are not advancing at the levels that they should, but we still have a hustle mentality. We still have a work hard mentality. We still have a like pick yourself from the bootstrap. Like all of that is just so false, because we've been doing that. So clearly, while waiting for systemic changes to happen in the workplace, while waiting for them to kind of wake up and say, look, I got to change things if I want to keep my talent. We need to be focused on well-being. We need to be eating healthy. We need to be waking up every day, being mindful. I'm prayerful every morning. My first order of business is prayer, reading my Bible. I'm like, I drink my water. And so I started telling people, look, if your name ain't Jesus, don't speak to me. I'm 9 a.m. I'm not speaking to anybody if your name is not Jesus.
Okay? I love that.
because the more that I do that, I'm better at work.
All right. Episode 100. GarageBand is about to kick me off with all the time limit that I have. So once again, thank you so much, everyone, for your role in getting us to 100. I'm so thankful for you. It's exactly why we're doing this giveaway. Once again, all you have to do in order to get some podcast merch, life-changing journal, and a life-changing month in free one-to-one performance coaching by yours truly, all you have to do is go rate, review, take a screenshot, send it over to us at Desi Abeda or at I Made It Pod to enter. We will announce that winner on May 6th at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard. Without further ado, y'all, I'm in for another 100. Thank you so much for your role in this. Such a big moment for all of us. Let's go. What's up, high performers, high performance mentor and dietitian Desi here. Before I let you go, I just want to speak to your heart real quick. If there's something inside of one of these stories or inside of one of these episodes that is really resonating with you, it's because I'm speaking to the high performer in you. So there's two things that I want you to do before you get done here. One, if you're looking to surround yourself with other high performers and you're looking to get more of a cue with how to become the high performer that you need to become, I want you to join our Facebook. It's called the High Performers Club. I'll make sure that we have that in the show notes of each and every episode. All you got to do is click on the link, answer a couple questions, and you're in, and you get full access to a wide variety of free videos, free content for you, free ways for you to step up and become the high performer that you need to become. On the other end, we also know that information is readily available. It's the application that people need to invest in order to get to that point where they have sustainable change towards their habits and towards their high performing selves. And so if you're looking in ways to work with me, please click on the link, fill out a couple questions, and see what kind of spots are available in the moment. I would love to work with you if you are someone who is looking to become the high performer that you need to become, because it's what I do. Love y'all. Thanks for listening.